I think it's really important to kind of acknowledge that this sound shift that you're experiencing doesn't actually have to do with mechanism, and it doesn't have to do with whether you're in chest voice or head voice or falsetto or whatever, right? Whatever terms we want to use for this. Um, these changes with audible sort of bifurcation events um, signal a change in adduction. So if you take a look at that Herbston's Feck paper, the membranous and cartilaginous vocal fold adduction in singing, there's some really nice language that kind of explains exactly what's happening. But suffice it to say, when we ascend into falsetto, there are two primary strategies we can do. And one of them has a high degree of cartilaginous adduction, and one of them has a low degree of cartilaginous adduction. And so when we have that low degree of cartilaginous adduction, the sound is really suddenly audible as a huge change from our more adducted chest register into that abducted falsetto. Because what happens is the vocal folds are sealing shut with the weight, with the sort of like shape of the vocal fold and the actual flexion of the fold itself. So those muscles get thicker when they flex, and like every other muscle in your body, when you flex, that muscle starts to bulge. Well, they bulge next to each other, and that ends up sealing your glottis and providing some closure. The problem arises that when we start to get higher and higher in pitch, those folds start stretching out. And they can't simultaneously flex and stay bulgy and stretch out at the same time. It's physiologically impossible. And so what ends up happening is we get this kind of like almost the sound of like a rubber band snapping. There's just like a sudden like twing kind of sound, and we get this like sudden shift in pitch. Let's see what this sounds like. If I ascend and go, ah, and we could hear a little gear shift sound. Now it's really important. That was a quite subtle version of this, fundamentally speaking. There are often people will get like huge gaps in the sound. So it'll sound more like this. And there will be like several pitches missing between the low end of that bifurcation event and the upper end of the bifurcation event. And sometimes that can be as much as an octave. So instead, what are we going to do? I want you to listen to this next sound, and I think it's just to clarify again about whether we're in falsetto or not. I'm going to ascend, and you won't hear, well, fingers crossed, if I do it well, you won't hear that sort of sudden yodel or bifurcation event, and instead, it should just sound kind of seamless. But I will say that at the top, the sound I hear is falsetto. I would call that a falsetto sound. But there wasn't any major shift along the way. So fundamentally, we still want to go to falsetto. We still want to be able to access that range. We just want to access it without that sudden and I think of it in a couple of ways. I might describe it as kind of like a gap in the sound, a yodel. Sometimes it reminds me of like the sound of a donkey. Hee-haw, hee-haw. And especially if you're descending. And trying to cross over. That's what that kind of ends up feeling like to me. Kind of donkey braying like. So we want to kind of explore those sounds and get used to discovering where they're happening. When you have identified what pitch range they want to happen at, then we can start to try the next set of sort of explorations in learning how to control that sensation. Okay, so yeah, I'll wrap here.